on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, and exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, the end, Disney.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in to another night of live streaming here on the Watchtower's anti-site. Yeah, this is Six Screens of the Watchtower, and we've got Anne-Marie coming in from Northern California, and she's an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and she has some things to share with us tonight. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hello, my brother Rick. How's it going? It's been crazy.
Well, it has been crazy, but I know tonight, most of the time, I think people are going to be at least wanting to talk about that shooting out in Germany. Terrible situation. I know you're going to be talking about that tonight as well, Anne-Marie, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, just like we did after the announcement with Anthony Morris no longer being on the governing body, when you have that special, I mean, this is kind of a shock to not only the ex-JW community, but I'm sure to the JW community. Absolutely.
Yeah, so many big stories just in the last few weeks. And I came across something today I'm going to be sharing on JW World News tonight. They kind of did like a local needs talk for Tony Morris, and it's a live streaming for March right off of their website.
Really?
And I was viewing that today. And Anne-Marie, I must tell you, you know what the Watchtower does during those local needs talk? They kind of, if a person's been disfellowship, they kind of give you little clues, but they don't say the whole thing. Well, I got some news to share with you guys tonight on JW World News about Tony Morris.
I can hardly wait. Yeah, the Watchtower is amazingly masterful at saying what they're saying without actually saying what they're saying, but everybody knows what they're saying.
So, Anne-Marie, let me ask you before we get into the program tonight. You heard the news this week, March 9th, just a few days ago. Of course, for those just listening in, I think everyone's heard it. But if you haven't, there's been 8 people that have been murdered or are killed in Germany, in Hamburg, Germany, this week. And what it was a shooter that went to the Kingdom Hall, shot through the window, and killed a number of Jehovah's Witnesses, 7 Jehovah's Witnesses, including an unborn baby. Terrible news. So, Anne-Marie, what was your when you first heard that, what was your reaction? This is one of these things you'll never forget.
Well, of course, my reaction is only mine, but I feel like it's the Watchtower organization. You can only have an infected pimple for so long before it finally pops. This is what Watchtower does. They spew their poison, they hurt people, they ruin lives, they shatter relationships, destroy marriages and families, have people bleed to death, drive them to suicide. Is it any wonder that something like this is going to happen? And, I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm saying you cannot have an organization this cold-hearted, this greedy, this controlling, this heartless without having some kind of repercussions popping out all over the place sooner or later.
Well, I'm going to be interested in some of the people calling into your program tonight. And I do have some pictures as you're speaking. I did capture a number of pictures from a number of news agencies around the world. So as you're speaking tonight, I'm going to be showing some pictures of this horrific event that took place in Germany. Now, I just want people to be aware. So some of these pictures might be disturbing. So, people can be. I had a man email me last night, and he really is needing some real help. It's been bothering him so much. He's a former Jehovah's Witness. And this week, with the deaths of the people at the Kingdom Hall, the witnesses, it really bothered him a lot. So if there's going to be some people that really are having difficulty with this, don't watch the pictures. You can listen in, but I wouldn't watch the pictures I'm going to put up on the screen.
Yeah, I think it's really important to put pictures up to help really cement just how crucial it is to understand the true nature of not only Watchtower, how evil it is, but the evil it causes, the poisoning. You poison people long enough, you poison their minds and their hearts, they're going to start oozing poison. And I think that's what we're seeing. We need to face reality. No more hearts and flowers, no more fantasy bubble. Oh, they're just such nice people. Oh, they represent God. Well, they're not perfect. Just wait on Jehovah. This corrupt, twisted, poisonous, sick, and sorry excuse for a religion is has done so much damage. And I think we all need to wake up fully and completely. And so I hope nobody is going to get mad at you, my brother, for showing pictures that need to be shown, because it helps solidify just how bad the situation is, because too much has been going on that's been swept under the rug, and we haven't seen how bad it really is. Thank you, my brother Rick.
Well, thank you, Anne Marie. I really appreciate you want to do a program on this tonight. So what I'll do is I'll cut you loose, but I'm here if you need me. And we'll
Hey, Rick.
see. Yes, hello, Larry.
Hi, I just want to say real quick, sorry I missed your call. I think it was yesterday. I had just stepped out. They told me that you left a message. I'll get back with you soon.
Yeah, in fact, give me a call tomorrow sometime, Larry. In the morning, if you I'll call you sometime tomorrow and see if we can't make some arrangements for you. Okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. So, anyways, Anne Marie.
Thank you, my brother Rick.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead and do your thing. I'm here if you need me.
Brother, thank you so much. Remember, I have the little rug skin, so if you guys hear noise, I'm trying to hide from them right now. Anyway, everyone, please let me welcome you in to Six Screen Saturday. This show is the Tentacles of the Watchtower, touched by the Tentacles of the Watchtower. Today is Saturday, March 11, 2023, and just as we're barely kind of digesting the surprise shock of not having Anthony Morris to be in the governing body any longer, now we hear of this terrible tragedy in Hamburg at the Kingdom Hall, where people were shot, and some are still hurting and some are dead. And I just feel so bad. I only saw a picture through the window of one brother in a gray suit on the floor. And he obviously was dead because nobody was tending to him. He was already dead. It's a terrible tragedy, because no matter how much anger we have toward the Watchtower, let's just say leaders, the ones who are in control, we don't want our lost brothers and sisters that are still clinging to the false beliefs of this cult to be hurt. We don't preach hate. We are just angry toward the injustice. But some people, like this brother that went off and shot all those people at the Kingdom Hall, we know he had to have hit basically a breaking point, because it's like there comes a point where there's nowhere left to go. There's nothing more to lose. There's no other avenue. You can't cope anymore. And we have tragedy. But it's sad. We have to understand and admit and remember, this kind of tragedy has happened many times. But now it's in our face. It's in the face of a lot of people and in the face of a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. And unfortunately, there are Jehovah's Witnesses who are spinning this terrible situation as being the work of wicked apostates who have now gone ugly and hateful and violent. And it's just a sad shame. So this show today is dedicated to all of you listening in, for you to come on, share your thoughts, share your feelings, whatever opinions you have. This is for you, because we know that our brother Rick did a special on the night of the day that this happened, but I think that there are more that would like to be able to express. So anyone want to share anything, please feel free. It's *6. We have plenty of time to do everyone. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, I just want to say, that cult really affects the minds and emotions of people, to the point where a lot of people have committed suicide and have thought about committing suicide. And it just takes a little bit more push from suicide to killing others. I mean, there's just a little bit more, a little anger or a little bit more depression, and it could really push a person to murdering. Because like you said, if all their hope is gone, and I likened it to when how they treated me when they disfellowshipped me. I likened it to when you think there's gravity, and you all your life you thought there was gravity, and then all of a sudden everything starts flying away, nothing's held down, your world just totally changes. And that's what happens when you think that you've been in a loving organization, and then you are treated with such disdain and hatred. It really changes your perspective.
Yeah, it really does. And what's heartbreaking, I just remember this one brother who called in recently to the 6 Screens, if I'm remembering correctly. He said it was really horrible to be an elder. He didn't want to disfellowship anyone because he felt that if somebody was confessing and admitting and they're sorry, that's showing repentance. And he said he remembered people, like one in particular, he said he remembered this one guy on his knees begging for mercy. And the elders in the committee said, well, we need to see that you are showing signs of repentance. I think they was talking about Matthew chapter 5:3 or something. I don't know. But they can just be so cruel. And when they torture you mentally and spiritually and emotionally, and then they have the gall to say you did it to yourself.
I likened it to when you think there's gravity.
No, I start getting mad.
And you all your life you thought there was gravity, and then all of a sudden everything starts flying away, nothing comes down. Your world just
Does somebody have YouTube on or something? We're hearing like a TV or something in the background.
That's pre-recorded. It was playing my voice again, so I don't know who is doing that, but it wasn't me.
No. Yeah. If anybody's on the phone line, please don't have the computer speakers on, please, because it can get kind of frustrating.
Hey, Anne-Marie.
Cool. Yes. Hey.
Yeah, I think you were talking about an elder and a kid was on his knees. That was me. I was serving as an elder in Yuma, Arizona when that happened. I called in a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about that. And he was so sick sexually. I mean, he was a pervert of the highest caliber. I think he's an elder in Phoenix, Arizona now. So maybe I did wrong not disfellowshipping him. But when he was young, they would go to all the strip clubs in Mexicali, Mexico. And but anyways, this kid was on his knees, and that's one of the things elders hate, because I never voted to in the committee to disfellowship because these kids were not in the right. When I say kids, they could be 25, 26 or older, but any young person, that you might have their life in the palm of your hands. Because if you get disfellowship, there is a chance that they could commit suicide. So it weighs heavy on some elders. That was the worst job being an elder. But if I saw any sign of repentance, like for instance a confession, that was good enough for me. I go, I'm not disfellowshipping this SOB, even if he banged every hooker in the whorehouse, I wasn't going to BF him if he came clean. But you're right. It is so dangerous. That caller that was calling before me, and he was talking about gravity, how everything is just falling apart. It really is like that, especially a young person. Imagine a 17 or 18-year-old person who has no family, no friends outside of the organization, and the next day he's just left in total darkness. I don't think the Jehovah's Witnesses realize that you're putting everybody's life at stake. That's why there's so much suicide going on.
Yeah. And
it's a dangerous job.
Yeah,
Marie, I just wanted to add too that you can never do it right, no matter how how sorry you are. If you cry, they say it's crocodile tears. And if you don't cry, because you know they're going to say crocodile tears, they'll say you didn't have any emotion, that you were cold. So no matter what you do, they're against you. They're totally prejudiced.
Brother, do you know why? Do you know why? Let me give you some insight as serving as an elder. That was a beautiful statement that you just said, but let me give you insight why you are correct. There's a lot of politics, church politics play into this. You got to remember, there is a committee of elders, an elders meeting, to assign the judicial committee. So let's say you're an elder's pet. Let's say you're real good friends with the Kobe or the presiding overseer. The presiding overseer is going to put elders who are favorably inclined not to disfellowship you. Do you understand? That's how the politics works. You got to understand the inner workings of the judicial committee. So let's say you're a brother who's always criticizing the elders, or you're always asking questions. All the elders are going to DF you. It's going to be payback time. You're going to get DF, even if you are truly repentant. Let's say you go out and get some hookers and you're repentant. It doesn't matter. Your past is going to catch up to you. They're going to disfellowship you because there was a meeting, an elder meeting, and they got together. So it's like a star chamber. They already picked the body to go in there and kill you. It's like a jury that is unclean. They've already made the decision. No matter what you say, nothing can save you. So that's how a judicial committee works. There's an elder meeting before the judicial committee to pick the elders that are going to go in there. So yeah, you're right. That's why it doesn't matter if you're repentant. They're going to hang you.
Wow, thank you for that.
Like, for instance, here's another way. Let's say an elder commits fornication or adultery. Does he have to be disfellowshipped if he confesses?
No.
Okay, so what happens to him? Let's say the elder body could put him on restriction. He will not get disfellowshipped. What will happen is you'll notice some elders who don't give parts for about 6, 7, or 8 months. They're what you call on restrictions. Mm-hmm. They committed some kind of sin or some kind of shortfalling, and what the elder body is doing is covering it up. They don't disfellowship him, but they put him on restrictions. So he's unclean for about a year. And us, the witnesses, the rank and file, we don't know about that. But that's how there's a lot of politics. I always said, this is why the Jehovah's Witnesses don't get involved in electoral politics. We're so involved in church politics. There's no time for electoral politics. There's so much politics in the elder room, like you can't believe. Yeah, and then we wonder why these people are at the point of suicide. The elders drove them there. The elders drove all the sheep to the point of suicide. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're good. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. So how, brothers, I really appreciate your input with the disfellowshipping and how elders behind closed doors really, really hurt people badly. And usually it's the very ones that are the most vulnerable. They're broken, they're lost, they're scared. And it seems to be when some elders will just kind of beat them up, almost like they enjoy having that power.
And you know what? One day, have a show. Just ask sisters, only sisters, to call in who have been in judicial committees for sexual reasons, to call in and tell you with their own words what questions the elders ask them. Just do that one day. You'll be flabbergasted. Okay, that's all I wanted to share.
I appreciate that. So the insight that you have given, both of you, with, what can happen behind closed doors, how they treat people, and so many have been just either disfellowshipped or just pushed out of the congregation, because even thinking about getting dressed and walking into the Kingdom Hall, knowing that you're going to be shunned, that you're talked about, gossiped about, given dirty looks, or just straight up ignored, has to be horrible. That is the most awful, awful torture. And we all know, well, most of us do, what it's like to be bullied as a kid, or bullied at work, or just treated unfairly. But, the way they are, or way they can be in the organization, it is absolute horrible. It's the shunning and the gossip and the dirty looks and the cold shoulder treatment is so exacerbated in the Watchtower organization. I mean, they know hate and meanness like I've never seen in my life. And it's exactly the opposite of love and the whole association of brothers that I was taught that Watchtower was. So I was thinking with what you guys have brought out, what we know about Watchtower, how does this relate to what possibly was behind this gentleman, this brother? I'll say brother because it wasn't technically disfellowshipped as far as I understand, but that he had left and not on good terms, the Watchtower. How does this relate to his mindset, to his desperation, to him finally breaking to where he did what he did? Because I thought, just one thought, I saw a picture of his face, and he looked like a shy kind of a person that doesn't go around sauntering around like he's bitter and better than everybody else, like he was almost like a mouse that maybe got picked on. Please go ahead, share. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah. So what happens is, I just relate my case. I went in to confess. I had been inactive for 13 years, and I kind of figured I was going to be disfellowshipped, but we were always taught to confess and make it right before God, and take your medicine as so to speak. But here's the thing. It's not that they just, if you're expecting to get disfellowshipped, like I was, but then the way they treat you, it's like they tell you not only that they're going to disfellowship you, they tell you that you are not sorry for it, you are not repentant, and Almighty God does not forgive you and does not love you. They take it away. They're not just disfellowshipping you. They're stealing your mentality of love, your ability to feel loved by God. They strip it all away from you. And they make it as if there's no repentance left for you, even though eventually if you got reinstated, supposedly that's forgiveness, right? But at the moment, they're treating you as if there's no hope at all for you. And so, as I was saying before, it just from being so hurt and wanting to commit suicide, and I actually was going to commit suicide because I thought, well, if God didn't forgive me, and I know that I'm repentant, and I know that I'm sorry, but if God knows me better than I know myself, and I really am not sorry, I'd rather take my own life than God destroy me. If there's no forgiveness for me and God's going to destroy me anyway, I might as well do it myself and save God's hand, save him from doing it. So it's that state of mind, and then for somebody to be like that, and then with the anger on top of it, and I can only imagine the guy, whoever he was, thinking that he's going to get even with these people. And when you're mad and when you're angry, it blinds you from logic to the point where you think you're taking it out on the people you want to take it out on, but you're taking it out on innocent people. But at that point, that person doesn't care.
That's one dynamic.
Yeah.
And here's another one. And by the way, first of all, I think I'm the one that messed up the early part of the show, so I apologize. But this is very important too. So keep in mind now, say for example, you're struggling with the overcrapping generation, and you say something to somebody, and you go back there, suddenly you're yanked back, and then they form a committee, compiled of which one party might be the guy who hands out, like JP said the other day, hot dogs at Costco. And you're trying to wade through these kinds of questions that are totally reasonable. And ultimately, you have to shed your brain and let them have their way with what you're supposed to believe, or you're out. And in this case, this particular individual We don't know exactly what happened, and we're all speculating, but he ended up out. Now, for 18 months, in this time that we live in, he knows for sure the overcrapping generation is not scriptural. And he knows the people that judged him, and he knows that they've employed unbelievable, unfair power and damage to his life in terms of shunning, etc., which is what I believe Gilbert weighed in when Rick was on the air shortly after this incident, and he said, shunning is the first act of violence. It is a violence, really. It is emotional violence. So you have this stuff welling up in people, and it's amazing. This is probably the worst thing that's happened. But the suicides, I mean, all these German people are all in shock, and they're bringing flowers to the scene. There's probably more suicides in even months than the 7 people that died by the gunshots. Now, it's terrible that this guy was pushed that far, but they do push you that far. It's all up to you to be a superhuman, restrained person against this kind of unbelievable injustice. So there you have it. This is what happened. And there's lots of kinds of things in the world today that can inspire these kinds of actions. And this is definitely in that, what you call wheelhouse. It's very, very sad. And it's just, it's not going to stop. But I tell you, this is shedding a lot of light on that organization. And we got to get louder now. We got to get this very clearly put in front of the public so they understand, and people that are in need to be confronted. And they've managed to keep them behind this weird bubble of First Amendment, etc. nonsense. So damage has been done in a great way. I'm out.
Yeah. Hey, I want to add to that. You are so correct. They got to be confronted because the publishers must know this. They almost worship the elders. The publisher, the sheep of the Jehovah's Witnesses, almost worship the elders. The elders are the voice of God himself, Jehovah, in the eyes of many publishers. These are men who a lot maybe didn't graduate high school, that maybe they have no secular training. They never had any money or any power, and now they got all the power of life and death in their hands. When they go to education on judicial committees, they're trained. This is what the publishers don't understand. When the elders are interrogating you, they're not in prayer to Jehovah or Jesus Christ to see if that brother is repentant. They're listening and listening. And if you don't cross all your T's and dot all your I's, for example, let's say in your testimony, you said you had sexual relations with one person, one time. In cross-examination, it comes out you did it twice. That will be evidence of that you're not repentant, and they're going to use that to DF you. So the elders are not looking for love. For example, if one of the elders says, "For God so loved the world," God is a merciful God, the rest of the body will tell the elders, "No, that's out of context." So the mercy of God is never the context of a judicial committee. The mercy of God is never in context. The words of the publisher, and the publisher, they go in there confessing everything. So they almost, the police say, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The publishers have to understand that. Anything they tell the elders is going to be used against you. That's why Jesus shut his mouth when he was in his judicial committee, because he knew Pontius Pilate and Herod were going to use it against him. The publishers have to shut their mouth, because with those words, the elders are going to disfellowship you. These are the things that the publishers have to understand. A judicial committee, there's a lot of politics involved in a judicial committee.
It's not a real court anyway.
Yes, it's a star chamber court. Yes, you're correct. You are so correct. It's not a court, but they use it as such. They yield life and death over the sheep.
Yeah, it's called dispensing salvation, and they don't really have the requirement to do that. And
so we have to tell all our brothers. We have to tell all our brothers and sisters, shut your mouth. Anything you say, the elders will use it against you. Yeah. Interesting.
This is what we know about the case. I read all the stories on the wire. We know from Reuters is that the shooter was a banker. We know from Associated Press, and this is hard even for me to say, that one of the bullets pierced the woman's uterus and actually shot into the fetus. We also know that the shooter, from ABC News, the footage, we know that he had 100 rounds in 2 places. That's 200 rounds. We know also that a bomb squad was called in, and it's shown on the footage. Other than that, we don't have a backstory on this, but we knew that 8 souls died and many others were injured. And it's reported in the first story that I read that 14 shots were heard, but I've had no follow-up on the story or the shooter. So that's what we do know.
Yeah. So it's all speculation. Everything we're saying, we don't know what happened, but we do know, because all the callers that are calling in, they're saying, this is what happened in my case. This is what happened in my, and every witness has a story to tell.
Absolutely.
And our story as elders is to warn all the witnesses, be careful. The elders are not educated in God's mercy. They're educated in Watchtower's reasoning of how to detect lies in a confession, in a forced confession. These men are not in prayer to God for Holy Spirit. They don't even believe in the Holy Spirit. They're not even trying to ascertain if a person is really repentant. They just want to see if the story checks out. If they see anything, that's it, you're DF'd. And if you have a bad background with the elders, you're DF'd. There is no Holy Spirit in that. It's a dark, dark chamber, the elder room. And we have to warn all the brothers, the active ones, hey, if the elders get you in the judicial committee, just shut your mouth. God's not going to hold it against you. They're not God's organization anyways. They're not a real court. Close your mouth.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie? Anne-Marie?
I'm right here.
I wanted to mention that the night that this occurred, I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm sure Rick will later, but he was announced that night that he was disfellowshipped. He had not been attending for some time, but he was disfellowshipped that night. So I have to believe that disfellowshipping and this horrible incident in Germany, it had to tie in together. It had to be because of his disfellowshipping, and he just went off the edge.
Yeah, that's good, Susan. You brought that up. This is Rick here at the control panel, and that's absolutely right. I've been researching all day. People have been sending me things. Insiders have been sending me things. But what we absolutely have come to agreement on here, at least the consensus that some of us today were putting together here at the 6 screens, is the man. His name was Philip. I guess you pronounce it Fuse, F-U-S-Z. You can see his picture up there on Facebook and up on YouTube. But just to make a long story short, and we'll go more into it on our JW World News broadcast tonight, he was indeed disfellowshipped that night. And disfellowshipping takes place at the end of the meeting, which was 9 o'clock. They were just getting ready to wrap the meeting up when he started firing through the window. And what it was a year and a half ago, Philip left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they really didn't do too much to him. I guess he kind of faded, but he had some gripes against the witnesses, and he wrote a book, and we're going to get into that tonight. But he actually wrote a book that's being sold on Amazon, and that was just published in December of 2022, just a few months ago. And consequently, what happened is the elders in the congregation got a hold of the book, and the book really was anti-witness. So they accused him of being an apostate and were going to disfellowship him on March 9th, which was the night of the shooting. So that's what we have. And wait till you hear more tonight. I'm going to go into some detail tonight that you haven't heard before. It's just remarkable. But Philip Fuse, I suppose that's how you pronounce it, F-U-S-Z. He's the one that did it. He's at this point, I suppose we have to say the alleged shooter, but I mean, it was him. But we'll have more on that tonight.
Rick?
But yes. Go-
Hey, my name's Kathy. I've never ever called in before. I'm a little nervous.
Don't be nervous, Kathy. It's all right. You're with family here. You're with family.
Okay, so I know a really, really devout Jehovah's Witness. I mean, she is the most devout Jehovah's Witness I have ever known. So I text her really early Saturday morning, and I said that I saw on CNN about the mass shooting at the Kingdom Hall in Germany, and I expressed my condolences. I said, I'm so sorry to see this happen, and I will be praying for all the brothers and sisters. And her response kind of shocked me a little bit, I guess. I'm not really sure. It sounded almost robotic. And I want to read you the text that she sent. She said, "Thank you for your kind words." That in itself, she has never spoken to me like that. When I text her, she texts me back, "Hey girl, what's going on?" So this was really a formal kind of text that I wasn't accustomed to. But anyway, she says, "Thank you for your kind words. We are definitely living in critical times. Looking forward to these last days being over and better ones to come soon. Things like this show who the ruler of this world really is." 2 Timothy 3:1-51, John 5:19, Revelations 5:9. Thanks again for your warm thoughts. And that was the text I got.
So she hasn't texted you or talked with you in how long?
It's been several months. I started knowing them about 3 years ago. I worked at a convenience store. They were out witnessing, and that was their stop by. And they started talking to me, and I started to study with her. And I studied with her for over 2 years. Really involved. I knew her family. She invited me over for dinners. I had the memorial with them, and all this JW stuff was totally new to me because I was raised Pentecostal. So it was like, whoa, wait a minute. So I was constantly asking questions. I was like her little rebel student, I guess. But when we got to about chapter 46 of the new book that everybody studies, and they started getting into the governing body and all the rules and regulations of the organization, and it wasn't anything scriptural anymore. It was all organizational. I started having a lot more questions, and I started asking a lot more, and I started stating my opinion a lot more, and I found out really quickly that that was not acceptable. So I was kind of un-Bible studied, I guess. I was just like, okay, we're not even going to schedule a Bible study this week, and it went on from there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Kathy.
It's crazy
Go ahead.
because I really, really love this family. I mean, it's super nice people. I mean, they did for me during the 2.5 years that I studied with them a lot more than people in my church that I grew up with my whole life have done. So they kind of proved themselves to me in the beginning. And yeah, but I just thought it was a really robotic answer, you know, to what I mentioned about this mass shooting and what was involved. And I think what they are given to give us as a statement is, here's what your answer should be if anybody asks you.
Well, they are definitely robotic. They're heavily into their programming. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Kathy. You know, again, I was thinking it's time for everybody to wake up to what's really going on with this organization. It's not just all pretty pictures and happy songs and cute little videos. It's not the reality. They love you as long as you're one of them or becoming one of them. But if you start to show that your brain is still working, they will not like it and they will let you know.
Yeah, I found out really quickly, and it was a little painful, but I kind of separated myself from them first because I knew what was coming. I'd been watching some of the XJW videos, which I know was totally a sin and I shouldn't have been doing, but you know, I'm a sinner, so what can I say?
Yeah. Okay, well, I thank you. I'm just wondering if anybody would like to comment, or Kathy, if you would like to comment on your feelings or thoughts or opinions about the gentleman who felt that he had nothing left to do but what he did, the shooting and then killing himself. I mean, it just breaks my heart that somebody could be broken. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Scott in Florida. Yeah, I was just interested in what Kathy said, because my daughter stays in contact with a couple of my nieces, and to be honest, they kind of preach the same rhetoric to my daughter, who is, you know, she's not disfellowshipped, she's baptized, but I'm not disfellowshipped either. We just faded, but she stays. That's the only one that stays in touch with that side, my brother's side of the family, and she kind of did the same thing. So I think they're using it as an opportunity to count a little service time, and I'm sure that's what they're doing. And in the case of Kathy, it sounds like that typical, what came to my mind was the love bomb, that they love bomb you at first and try to make you feel how everything is so wonderful. But then the rubber starts to hit the road and things change. And now you have to toe the party line, right, Kathy?
Exactly. Yeah. You're reading my
and that's what it reminds me. As soon as you said it, I said, that's the pattern. Love bomb and then fall in line. And if you question anything or disagree, they'll drop you like a hot potato.
Oh,
so
yeah. I was a little spitfire at times. You know, I had her on her toes. For sure.
Yeah. So that's just very interesting, but it's sad that they're doing that, but I'm almost not surprised, just based on my own relatives and whether they're saying almost the same type of thing. They can be very, it is robotic. And because I found that when my wife died, when my sister's husband died a few weeks later, any witness that we came in contact with was just, oh, don't worry about it. You'll see them in the resurrection. It'll be fine. And my sister, my sister, who still believed a little bit, but she would say, but they don't understand. That doesn't help me now. I have problems now. I have to take care of the bills. I have to take care of the house. And she relied heavily on her husband for so many things. And she basically had to pull herself together and do it herself, because he sure didn't offer her any help. And they would just tell her, oh, it's going to be fine. And that used to infuriate her, because she said they don't understand, because many of them hadn't been through the loss of a mate and didn't understand. So you're probably better off out, but it's a shame that you like the family. And again, I like many witnesses. I was in for 30 years, and I met many friends that I liked, but unfortunately, their love is limited to your attendance to the meetings and falling in line. And once you drop that, then they won't have anything to do with you. The family won't have anything to do with you. And whether you get disfellowshipped or not, you're on the outs, like this man was.
I have learned that. And thank y'all so much for letting me be part of this platform tonight.
Oh, anytime, really. It is a family. Trust me, all of us have been through it at one time or another.
Hello.
So,
Yes, so maybe that's part of what's behind what this brother did. I mean, there's no real love. You're told that that's the only place you can find real love, but then you realize it's all fake. It's all a mirage. They destroy you. In 1 second, they destroy you and tell you it's your fault and there's no recourse, nothing left, you've lost everything. I'm just so sad, and I'm just wondering if anybody else thought of this. You know, so many. Hi, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna make a quick comment. I feel like I don't want to upset anybody, but I feel like people are acting like they have sympathy for this man. He murdered 7 people. He's evil. He's an evil person. There's no excuse for that. He's evil. He's a murderer.
Well, that's a very valid thought, Mike, and I always appreciate your take on things. I don't think anybody is having sympathy per se or excusing what he did, but there is something called understandable or reason. Somebody who does something awful, many times, unless they're just evil, like you said, many times they are pushed and prodded and mocked and tortured, and they go through terrible suffering before they finally snap. And I'm just wondering if it is.
I'm sorry. There's no excuse.
Michael, did I not say this is not about excusing? Nobody is excusing it. Nobody. Okay? Nobody is excusing it. You're right. There is no excuse. But do you think
Hey, Marie,
yes.
This is Scott. I just wanted to say I agree. It doesn't matter if you've been divorced, people snap. It doesn't matter if you are lost your kids, people snap. People get fired and they snap. It's not an excuse to do what they did. It never is an excuse. Violence is never the answer to a social situation that you are going through some sort of stress. So I don't think I know I don't condone anything that he had to do, but I think there's just an understanding of what might have been the pressures on him that maybe altered his thinking. And it sounded like he'd had some mental issues maybe before, because didn't the police do a welfare check on him in 2014 or 2016, Anne Marie? I thought I read that they did some sort of mental check, but there wasn't anything that they asked on. But I don't know I don't know who called him in. It could have been another witness that called him in. And I don't know what the laws in Germany are. In some countries, all you got to do is say, hey, he's got a problem. And the police show up at your door, and you're left kind of trying to prove that you're sane. So I don't know if that was the case. But no one's excusing him. I know I don't. That's terrible.
I don't think anybody is. But, I understand why Mike brought that out. Mike, I'm sorry. Were you finished with your comment? Mike, were you finished with your comment?
Oh, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I mean, I didn't mean to. It's just. I get the feeling, not just. I'm not talking about you per se, but it's like I get the feeling people are kind of like, everybody's coming up with the reason why he did it. There is no reason. I mean, for somebody to do this, they got to be insane. I mean, there's nothing, because whatever his issue with the Kingdom Hall was, he shot a woman? I mean, this person is nuts.
Well, Mike, the whole world is insane. All through history, people have always, whether it's wars they fight, whether it's terrorists, their perception is, you killed my children, I'm going to kill your children. In other words, you take away my daughter, I'm going to take away your daughter. That's just the kind of how people think. I'm not condoning it. I'm just surprised it hasn't happened sooner. I'm surprised it hasn't happened to the governing body's family, because a lot of people out there feel like, hey, I don't have a daughter anymore, so you're not going to have your daughter anymore either, and then you'll get to see how it feels. I'm not condoning it, but I can understand. I understand why it's not only in this situation, but even the terrorists, why they flew into towers. That was evil. That was wicked. But in their mind, they perceived Americans was doing them wrong. All wars throughout history, that's how they've always fought. You know, you do this to me, I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to drop atomic bomb to you. You bombed our ships, we're going to drop bombs on your cities, Hiroshima, you know. So, I mean, I'm not saying it is right, but it's just history. That's just how man has been for probably as long as history's been.
Well, yeah, you can say that, but this idea of standing outside a window and just shooting innocent people, no, I don't really think that that's been something going on a long time. Yeah, there's always been wars and stuff like that, but this mass shooting, no, that seems something kind of in modern times. I don't think that was going on in the past.
But died in the towers that blew into.
Well, yeah, well, that was 20 years ago. I'm saying in modern times. I mean, 100 years ago, I don't think mass shootings were a thing like they are now.
So yeah, but I'm talking about even the towers in 2001. You know,
yeah,
or any time, even in today's deal, you know, you go against a mobster, and you hurt some mobster, some leader mobster. What are they going to do? They're not going to come kill you because that don't make you suffer. They're going to come take your family out. You know, I'm not. You know, I don't know if this. I have no idea about this particular guy. And the other gentleman asked about the checkup. that was actually, I think, only 2 months ago. They went. Somebody sent an anonymous letter because I watched all of the news briefs. I only watched them. Of course, they had to be translated into English. But anonymous letter that he had some rage toward Jehovah's Witnesses, and so they did a check on his guns. And the only violation they found, he had some clips on top of his safe, and they just gave him a warning about it. You know, they didn't have it.
You know, you hear school shootings are going on. Well, I live in Michigan. They had a shooting at Michigan State University. Some guy went in there and shot people. They don't know why. Just not. You know, I'm just saying. I don't think things like that, just mass shootings, were not happening, you know, decades ago. I mean, I went to school in the 90s. I never thought somebody might come into the school and shoot the school up, but now it happens. So, you know,
I mean, here's the whole thing. That you never know. Everybody could be mentally ill. They could have mental conditions, or they could have been angry. They could have been. So I don't know that particular guy. But you say it didn't happen years ago. Look at Hiroshima. That's a whole city of innocent people.
Right, but that's a war. That's a war. That's a war. There's always been wars, but I'm talking about people just walking into a building and shooting people, innocent people. That didn't happen in the past.
Believe me, it's okay to kill innocent people during a war, innocent civilians, because that's what we as Americans did.
I didn't say it was okay. I'm just saying, you know, there's always been wars. But
it's evil. If we did something evil, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it because it embarrasses us. But I mean, in this man's mind, he was at war. I'm not justifying him, but I'm just saying I could see his perspective. I could see how somebody could have a mental wrong. Now, I've never done it. I've lost a daughter. I've never went and mass shot anybody. And I hope it never happens to my daughter in her area. I hope it never happens again. But here's the whole thing. Jehovah's Witnesses, and I hope that we say this again on Rick's show tonight, if they're listening in tonight, they need to be aware that it's not like their organization's portraying them that SWAT is actually coming to get them. In this case in Germany, SWAT risked their lives to go in and save our brothers and sisters. You know, as a matter of fact, if it hadn't been for them to get in, he would have killed everyone in there. They just happened to be there in 3 minutes because they was training at an office just down the street when they heard the shots. Their SWAT team. And if they hadn't been, they were getting ready to leave to go home. They're only on duty. They shouldn't have told the public this because they're only on duty so many days a week, and they told what days. If that man had been there a day that they wasn't on duty, he would have killed everyone in there. But that SWAT team, I am very thankful to them that they got in there so that he stopped. If they hadn't killed him when they did, he would have killed every one of them.
You know, I read about that. It made me think. I told my dad, I said, maybe the witnesses will say that was a miracle. That would be the miracle that they'll get out of this, that they just happened to be there to save all these people. You know,
what the witnesses do think of is that, hey, SWAT team is not to come get them like their organization portrays it in all their videos. SWAT team actually protected them. What they need to worry about is what are they, they need to worry about their own members that leave and become disgruntled, and that they're not stopping their organization from this shunning practice, because shunning is so inhumane. You know, it's just terrible, you know. And so I hope Jehovah's Witnesses will step up and say, okay. I mean, that's what I did, Mike. Before I left the organization, I didn't even know, I wasn't even involved with the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, but I just made it on my own self to say, I'm not going to shun anymore. I'm going to stop shunning. And a few of the other witnesses actually followed my example, and they quit shunning too. One of our dear friends, she did that, reached out to her daughter, but then, sad to say, when they told her they was going to start not letting her see her own grandchildren, she killed herself, you know. I mean, she was an active Jehovah's Witness, but because she stopped the shunning, and then they seen that, they told her, if you go to your daughter again, you're never going to see your grandchildren. And so, you know, if enough witnesses stood up, and just say, hey, enough's enough, we're not going to do this shunning anymore. You know, we don't want to cause this kind of mental instability amongst anybody. If they want to leave us, they're fine to leave us. We'll still be friends to them. We'll still talk to them on the street. We don't have to go to the movies with them or out to dinner, but we'll at least be decent to them. We'll treat them like they're humans, not like they're ghosts.
You know, I'd like to say after I stopped going to the meetings and felt that way, every time I would run into somebody disfellowshipped in the Walmart or any place like that, I would automatically walk up to them and give them a hug and just tell them how much I appreciated them, how much I missed them, and in a way trying to make up for the fact that I had shunned them at some point. And so it made me feel better that I was showing them some love, because most of them were truly nice people. They just had some problems, you know, but they were generally very nice people. It wasn't like they did anything terrible. And my own daughter was disfellowshipped, but I resolved, we stayed in contact with her. I didn't care what they said. I wasn't going to cut off all contact with my daughter. Now, we didn't go to the meetings with her. We didn't go out to dinner with her, but I'd call and ask her how she's doing. Are you doing all right? And we kept it to the family at least, but I wasn't going to shun her 100% even back when I wasn't active with us. There's no way. This is my kid. I won't do that to them. You know, that's me.
Can I just say quickly?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going on a full visit. I just want to say one thing, that it's not always portrays the thing of coming along and going to attack witnesses, of coming to break down the door, you know, during these awful things when SWAT teams is coming after Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, this time the SWAT team with their life. Most witnesses look at that and hear about that in real life, that the wealthy people aren't always out to get them. And hope that the SWAT team that actually did somebody without trouble. Anyway, sorry to butt in. I just wanted to say that because it was really getting my goat, you know, the whole thing about everybody knows that awful. You remember the bunker video, the famous bunker video where SWAT team come to break down the door to arrest or harm the Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, this was a SWAT team. They were dressed exactly the same way, and they came to save them. And if they hadn't arrived when they did, the whole congregation would have been shot, because he fled upstairs. He was firing indiscriminately, and he fled upstairs when they arrived. So I really hope that Watchtower, you know, takes this to heart. And anyway, sorry, I just wanted to say that. Okay, thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Sister, thank you so much. Thank you so much, sister, for chiming in. One moment, sweetheart, please. Sister, I really appreciate what you said about the SWAT team. And Randy, I want to thank you as well, because this shooting not only shines a light on the damage and the evil that Watchtower is pretty much solely responsible for, in my opinion, but it also, because of the SWAT team being so good at their job and protecting the witnesses, it kind of shines also a light on the Watchtower and how they lie and how they're always pointing the finger at somebody else as being the evil one. And it kind of, you know, hopefully is helping people wake up. Brother, go ahead. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick thought. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy would happen. The massacre is always terrible. But I'm kind of scratching my head on one thing. This man shot off 100 rounds, 100 bullets came out of that gun. I don't know what kind of a gun it was, but they said the magazine held 20 rounds. I'm thinking maybe a 45. But when you shoot off 100 rounds, and I say this with all kind of humility, when you shoot off 100 rounds and you kill only 8 people, including the fetus and himself, you kill 8 people in a crowded room, and you shoot off 100 rounds and only 8 people were killed. That's kind of surprising. And the other part, the reason I bring it up, is that there must have been a lot of brothers and sisters wounded, and I don't hear about that. I don't think you can shoot off 100 rounds in a Kingdom Hall and only have 8 people killed. There must have been a lot of people wounded, which brings up the issue of the blood. How many? I mean, if you're shot with a 45, that puts a really, really big hole in somebody, and that's what I think the weapon was. Although I've been watching the news and they didn't say that, and no one said how many people were wounded, and what's happening with them is a blood issue going to be part of this. This might show up. This might, because it's always going to be on the news, at least for weeks. And if more people die, they're going to say, well, you know, somebody died 3 days later, but that's because they didn't stop the bleeding and they died. I think the blood issue is going to be part of this. Thank you, Anne Marie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dick. You know, I can't help but think one thing as far as what you alluded to with the shooting and how many rounds were expelled from the weapon and how many people died in comparison to how many rounds he shot. I'm thinking he just went in there and just started shooting, not necessarily that he took aim and shot. We heard that he was shooting in the parking lot too. I don't know. But the other thing I'm wondering if anybody has thought of, we know that many, thousands, probably thousands and thousands, have committed suicide in desperation to stop the mental and emotional pain caused by what Watchtower has done to their life, destroyed it, taken away their entire support system, giving them no hope to ever recover the good standing or their family or being right in front of God. But maybe a couple of times people have shot up like this guy did, maybe they're ready to commit suicide, but they want to make a statement. They don't want to die in vain, because we know Watchtower, when they hear of a suicide of somebody who was either disfellowshipped or just left, they say, see what happens when you leave Jehovah's organization. They have this smugness about them. They will use somebody's sad trauma and drama and depression as somehow to make themselves look good and to mock the one who was driven to suicide. And I personally think that perhaps this one, I forgot what his name is, thought, you know what? I want to make sure that if I die, that everybody has something to think about. Thank you. Anyone want to comment or share their opinion?
Associated Press said that someone heard 14 shots, but then again, when you look at the other story from the feed, it said 100 rounds were found in one location and another 100 rounds were found in another location. But those 200 rounds were not fired. It's noted that 14 shots were heard.
Yeah, but does anyone want to comment on the idea that maybe he wanted to make a statement to make sure that this was something that everybody was going to take notice of?
Yeah.
And Marie.
Go ahead, dear.
Yeah, I just
go
want
ahead.
to thank Dick for his comment about Watchtower's position on blood, their doctrine on blood, how that likely will contribute because of that policy to future deaths. I hadn't thought of that. That's a really good point Dick made. I'd also like to mention about another policy, though, that probably has resulted. I mean, there's no way to prove what would have happened, but I think if everybody thinks about this policy Watchtower has, it's a policy other churches do not have. That's a policy that they lock their doors, but when their meetings start. See, their doors was locked. That's why he had to shoot out the window up there and come through the window. That's why he was shooting in the window. It was to get in because the doors were locked. When the police got there, when the SWAT team got there, they were delayed a few minutes because they said they had to get the door busted open because the door was locked. So see, other churches don't lock their doors. If their doors had not been locked, that SWAT team could have got in probably 2 or 3 minutes sooner. And I don't know if that, that could have saved another life or two. Like nobody knows, but that's just another policy that Watchtower's got with locking their doors.
And that policy came in as a result of the Kingdom Hall crashes that were happening a lot, about 2018, 2019, and they installed that. So they overreach a lot of things with the control and paranoia. And here's the big paranoia. Here's the big one that has to do with shunning. They have the shunning policy enforced, and they can't give it up because now all of their beliefs are a house of cards. You have the free flow of any conversation level without that judgment, condemnation of this person who now is on the outside, and we'll show you how determined we are to keep our congregation clean. It's the shunning policy. That's what's going on. So as damaging as it is to people's lives, as usual, they don't care. They don't care about that. What they care about is their power. And it's insanely abusive and completely unjustified. And it's basically in the movie Braveheart. You have a Longshanks character in the governing body, and they don't care. Like in one scene, there's a battle, and the general is told, put the archers on, and both sides of the thing are in the middle of the battlefield. And the general looks at the king and he says, "Archers, won't we kill some of our own?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, we have more." So that brutal tyranny. This is a spiritual tyranny, and people have to see it that bad.
I can only think of one Jehovah's Witness that might be happy that this tragedy happened.
Who's that?
If I could add a point.
Anthony Morris. That's the way he's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the brother was done. I'll step back.
That's all I was going to say, Anthony Morris, because he's saying, hey, at least spotlight's not on me. People's not going to be talking about me now.
That's right. Good point.
It must be a relief. What were you going to say, brother?
Oh, I was just going to bring up in 2018, Eagle Harbor, Michigan, there was a tragedy there with a triple murder suicide. It was a woman named, I think it was Lauren. Yeah, if you guys remember that. And that was 2018. That was 5 years ago. Can we imagine coming back, fast forwarding to 2023, and all the garbage that's even gotten worse that's coming out of the mouths of the governing body? Enemies are babies of God. That was before all that. I believe. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And go figure that this is going to cause worse and worse mental disorders in people. And it's going to cause more and more pain for people that can't cope with the pain that's being given to them from Watchtower.
That is such a really good point. That really is a fantastic summation of the whole situation of Watchtower and their ugliness. They're so ugly and evil and cold and tyrannical. That is such.
It's like the longer they're on the throne,
the worse it's going to get. I think we're going to be seeing more of this, and I'm not wishing it. It's sad but true, maybe. I know, speculation.
Right.
But thanks, hon.
No, thank you so much, brother, for that comment. And we need it to get worse, because if it doesn't, nobody's going to wake up. They're going to stay in their little bubble and say, oh, it's just Satan. Oh, it's those wicked apostates. We just have to leave it in Jehovah's hands. They need to wake up. Thank you so much. Somebody wanted to comment?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I thought it was me.
And,
Go ahead, dear.
can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Hey, my brother Jesse and I've never said this, but we did a video for 2 hours last night. We went live, and I was actually impressed because we talk about stuff like this all the time. But one of the things that my brother and I have been talking about for years is the type anti-types that Jehovah's Witnesses teach. And so the chickens have come home to roost, because remember Pharaoh, he worshipped the frogs, and then the frogs came back and bit him.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is what happens with Watchtower. We can go down the list after list after list. Everything that Watchtower has taught, espoused, everything is now coming back and haunting them. So the shunning are like the frogs of Pharaoh. They love the shunning. They worship the shunning. It was their sacrament. And now they're coming back. The frogs are coming back, and they're terrorized. And that's what's happening right now with what you're seeing. It is everything Watchtower teaches is coming back like a boomerang with a vengeance. Do you remember Jesus said that a person gets rid of a demon and then 7 come back? That's what's happening with Watchtower.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing. So many in the organization, like I said, I remembered, and I noticed a smug attitude even toward the 80-something-year-old grandfather who realized that the organization was not the organization he thought it was. He's disfellowshipped, and he had terrible health problems, and he was used to having his Jehovah's Witness family, his children and grandchildren, help take care of him, buy him groceries, take him to doctor appointments, help clean his house, do his laundry, because he was pretty much not able to take care of himself, and they all shunned him and just left him to die. And the smugness with which so many do their shunning is scary. And so if, they start, I'm not saying it's good or anything, but something needs to wake these people up, because so many have the attitude they did it to themselves. They're dying in the street. Well, they did it to themselves, like they're better. And the person who's suffering and dying, metaphorically or even physically killed themselves, they just have this attitude, well, you did it to yourself. We need to at least see that this is something that hopefully can help wake more of our lost brothers and sisters up. Please go ahead. I didn't mean to go on. Sarce?
Well, no, we need to wake up also to make sure that we're not being like Watchtower and can continue espousing bad things. Because this is bad. This is what we call bad karma. Bad karma has come back. You reap what you sow. All of these things that we've heard when we were growing up is coming true. And Watchtower, I'm sorry, they're reaping what they've sown. They talked about the types, anti-types. Well, now it's come home to roost. And this is what the only thing I think that can help a Jehovah's Witness. And I tell this to everybody all the time, is you need to raise up your hand like Alcoholics Anonymous, and you need to confess. You just need to openly confess your sin and just say, I'm out. I'm sorry. And that's what helped me. This is the result of worshiping, idolizing human beings that you'll never meet. They'll never meet the governing body, yet they'll idolize every word that they say. This is why idolatry is so bad. And this is why, Alcoholics Anonymous have it right. You need to come clean. Yeah, and that's my message to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, just to be able to be honest with yourself. You know, I read a quote on one of the videos or that was posted, one of the quotes that said, somebody said, those who cannot handle their own emotions seek to control others. And I thought at first it was kind of a weird thing to say, but then I thought of it, aren't the worst bullies or abusers those who cannot handle their own emotions, frustration, fear, low self-esteem, shame, guilt, whatever? You know, the Watchtower Society is so into being a tyrant, and then they have upped their tyranny. They've just basically been upping it. It's all about them, worship them, obey them, respect them, don't question them, and you better be loyal or else. I call the elders the Gestapo enforcers, because while on one hand they're portrayed supposedly as being our loving shepherds who are looking out for our souls, but yet they're also the ones that were the judicial committee behind the back door where you have no right to counsel, no right to support. And they have supposedly your life in their hands, and they love it. They love watching you squirm and cry, and it's terrible. I'm glad this is coming out. I'm sorry, anybody would like to comment or express their thoughts?
Yes, Anne Marie, I'd like to just add a little something to the conversation. What a lot of people don't remember, because they might not have been in the cult back in the 70s and 80s, but during the 80s when Ray Franz's book came out, Crisis of Conscience, they decided to stop disfellowshipping people, stop shunning people. Because I had a sister-in-law that got disfellowship for apostasy, and we weren't talking to her because, you know, we were JWs. And then they came out with the article to show erring one's love. So we had her over the house for dinner all the time. And then 4 or 5 months later, they came out with another article, and they said that disfellowshipping and shunning was proper. And the reason that it came out in the Watchtower to stop shunning was because Ray Franz wrote the article, which he did not. So what people should realize is that disfellowshipping is not biblical. It doesn't come from Jehovah God or anything that's spiritual. It is a control mechanism that the Jehovah's Witnesses use, and they've been using it quite effectively. And I really appreciate your program and everybody on Six Screens. They're bringing that to light. Again, just to repeat myself, if you don't mind, they told us to stopping to talk to people that are disfellowship. We could have them over for dinner and be nice to them, and then they reversed themselves. So if it came from God, they wouldn't have to reverse themselves. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your thought. I'm always surprised when you mention this, Dick, that Watchtower had this attitude or shifting from shunning to not shunning, back to shunning again. I personally don't remember that, and I don't know how I missed it, but I do remember before I was in the organization, my mother used to make sure I had a continuing subscription to the Watchtower and Awake, and I used to read, you know, the Awake magazine. And I remember there being an article, I think around May of 1974. It was this big old sloppy, sweet hearts and flowers article about, you know, we should have a loving heart, and we don't know their heart condition, and we should be merciful, and we don't know what they're going through, you know, show kindness, call them, see how they are, offer them a ride to the meeting, see if they need anything. You know, there's no reason to be cruel. We shouldn't be judged. And they even have scriptures about not being judged lest you be judged, and only, you know, Jehovah knows their heart, and the whole thing. And I heard of all these witnesses who had, you know, had to be shunning their parents and their grandparents and their children, reaching out to their lost family members, their friends, and crying, oh, we get to be with you again, and in love, just don't discuss spiritual things. And I think it was like 3 or 4 months later, they came out with this scathing article about associating with people who had left Jehovah and taken sides with Satan. On whose side are you on? And those who are faithful, true Christians who are loyal to Jehovah don't have anything to do with those who have taken a stand against Jehovah. And I remember reading that other article going, wait a minute, wasn't it just a couple months ago they said, don't be unkind and judgmental and show mercy? So thank you for bringing that out, Dick, because this organization, bad enough they're one way, but then they switch around. It's like your head is spinning. You don't know which way to roll your eyes. Anyone want to comment? Okay, well, I don't know if we're done with the show. Rick, how are we doing on time?
Well, Anne Marie, we got a lot of people still coming in. So why don't we give it about 5 or 10 more minutes, and then I'll pop in here and tell you when we're ready.
Okay, I was just wondering. Thank you, my brother. I was just wondering if there's anybody there. Anybody would like to share a thought, an opinion, something they read or heard, questions, comment on somebody else?
Yeah, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie?
Right here.
Oh, okay, Anne-Marie, just another quick thought. And I mentioned it last Wednesday when this first broke. Me and Rick went up to Columbia Heights, and they recognized Rick right away because they had state-of-the-art security system to protect the governing body. Now, the governing body has just put in their coffers over $2 billion. Do you think they could have metal detectors inside the Kingdom Halls to protect the brothers in case another, guy goes postal or goes wacky or something like that? They won't do that because they don't carry. I kind of like the comment one of the brothers made earlier in the program about the Braveheart, the movie, that they were shooting arrows in the air. And so, wouldn't that kill some of our people? Well, so what? There's more to come. That's their attitude, but they are going to protect themselves. When we were up at Bethel, they had all these security guys in their little blue blazers, protecting the governing body. But the rank and file, no. They could have some kind of metal detector at the door, but they're not going to invest the money to protect the brothers. And the way things are, they really should be touching the brothers because there's going to be a lot more of this coming down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your input, Dick. Go ahead, dear.
Well, just a quick comment. I get the feeling it sounds like what I'm understanding is that it's the organization's fault for what this guy did. I still say he was a nut. It's his fault. He's the evil one, and that's the one that I would condemn. That's my comment.
Well, you know what, Mike? I have to say I really appreciate your owning your opinion. I really appreciate that. Again, nobody is saying that it's Watchtower's fault. I do think a lot of those who have commented have basically pointed out that Watchtower very much shares a large part of the responsibility because, they do so much damage. And again, you can't hurt people and not expect that they're going to fight back in some way. Nobody says there's an excuse, and we don't know that. But when you're driven to that desperation, I think it was Rick who said that, if you get a rat in a corner and you keep poking them and poking them and poking them, when there's nowhere else to go, you're going to fight with everything you have. And personally, I think that perhaps this guy, driven to the point that he was obviously driven to, not saying he doesn't have responsibility. I personally don't think he was crazy. I think he felt there was no other way out but to suicide.
You absolutely don't. You don't think that man is crazy. He killed 7 people and himself, and you don't think that he's crazy? I don't know. I don't even have a response for that.
Can I say something for Anne Marie for all of us here?
Anne-Marie,
well, this is how I feel about it, and this is kind of almost factual. Watchtower attracts the mentally ill, the crazies. They do. And they don't only attract it, but not all of the people are, but I'm just saying they do. And they also create it. We have a woman who killed her baby after a couple of days after Stephen Lett said enemies of God. This is a cult, and when these brothers say, or they're not my brothers, when these men say these things, it is highly impacting people. And if you already got a crazy person, there's rumors that this man in Germany, and I don't know if it's true, that he may have only been in it for like a year and a half and left, and he was already crazy before that happened. But that's my other argument, that it tracks that as well. It tracks the mentally unstable. Can Watchtower make this man better? No, they can't. They'll make him worse, in my opinion.
Hi, can I comment?
Go ahead, dear. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for that comment, brother.
Yeah, whether or not.
Oh, thank you, Anne Marie.
Whether or not the man was crazy or not is, I mean, it's way beyond our ability to determine. I would not want somebody to determine that of me, nor any more than I should determine it of them. It's simply above us. What I would say, though, is we need to understand the laws of the jungle. And if anybody thinks we're beyond the jungle, they're delusional. We're human beings. We operate according to a justice, the best justice that we can pursue at the time. And when a person's being their income, their dignity, all bets are on that man or person is open to do whatever they can to settle things. And that's just exactly how it's going to be. It always was, and it always will be. And anyone who thinks otherwise is really, they're dreaming. They're dreaming. The hard facts of life are always in front of us, and the sooner we accept them, the better. That's my comment.
Yeah, I think all of us are capable of just about anything. If you're under the right circumstances, or let's say the wrong circumstances, nobody knows. Maybe he was crazy, maybe he was driven crazy, but no matter what, nobody's excusing it. But I'm saying, I think if we knew everything and the suffering, the mental and emotional suffering he must have been going through to get to that point, nobody just wants to go around shooting everybody. That's just not normal. It's not natural. What would get a person to do something like that? There are contributing factors, and I think Watchtower is a huge part of that contributing factor. People need to wake up. Go ahead, my love. Yes.
Hi, I just one thought. When a person is disfellowshipped, it can cause a lot of anger. But what people need to do is they don't want to let their anger turn to rage. And that sounds like there's a lot of rage in this crime that was committed in Germany. So I respect all of you out there who have been disfellowshipped. It's very hard. It's harder than I thought it was going to be. And I tried to prepare myself for it. But I'm grateful to all of you who have not let your anger over what's happened to you turn to rage. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for that. We don't know how hard it is. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have 5 siblings that are, besides myself, that were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. I was a pioneer for a while, and I really was a believer. But I've noticed that I have a niece that, for example, that at 14 years of age was taken in front of the Kingdom Hall on the stage when the congregation was told to shun her. She became a homeless person after that. She did for 9 years as a homeless person. And finally, because of help from others, we were able to help her. She has never wanted to burn down a Kingdom Hall or attack anybody. So I think that the response varies among people. I have another niece who was sexually abused and was thrown out of the house at 14 years of age because she accepted a card that was given to her, a little toy gift at the Medford Mall in Oregon. She never thought about retaliating that way. And of course, I've been shunned for almost 40 years now. I'm 72.
since I resigned my membership in the witnesses. And you get angry. Now, of those people that have reacted very badly, I know of 5 families that, one was mentioned just a little while ago, I think there was one in Michigan, Key Harbor, but where the person killed their family and themselves. That's not appropriate at all. But the logic is there because the witnesses believe that if you die before Armageddon, and that you will have a resurrection, but if you executed at Armageddon, then you have no chance. My younger brother and I actually, when we were kids, actually discussed killing my mother because we wanted her to get a resurrection. And my grandmother, who was a Catholic, if we killed her, we'd save her life in the long run, in eternal life. So there's bad logic that goes into it. There's also anger and reaction that sometimes needs help. I was in a support group where there was one man that was talking about killing his family. We've had 2 in Oregon here, the Bryant family and the Longo family, and both have had documentaries made on them on TV. But this particular guy wanted to kill his family. We didn't know what to do, so I talked, and we decided to talk to his attorney, his divorce attorney, because he was going through a divorce with his wife. And that saved, maybe that saved his wife and children who were in a Jehovah's Witness circle. I know of other close calls like that. So what this guy in Germany did was wrong. It would be better if he had a stronger reaction. I understand the horror of it and why they react the way they do, and we should cut him some slack for as far as understanding him. That does not excuse what he did. And if he would have survived, he would be tried and go to jail for the rest of his life, probably. Which would be understood it. And I'm just saying, just try to understand that there is reactions that are legitimate feelings, based on legitimate feelings for how people suffer. Well, I have 3 nieces that are shunned by their families and extended families, and I don't want to hear people make excuses for that.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought out the logic. You know, you have to understand, I mean, I'm talking about you, everybody. Watchtower is a very powerful mind control cult that is tyrannical, cold, and twisted and evil. People, and it was brought out, they tend to attract people that already have emotional problems. And they also tend to exacerbate emotional and mental problems, and they cause it, in my opinion. So when we see them doing what we call crazy things, you know, you take somebody's brain and twist it, it's probably going to not act in the best way. But there is a logic, as you brought out, brother. I think is it Romans 12 or Romans somewhere says something about the wages sin pays is death. And even Watchtower has brought out numerous times that if you die before Armageddon, you will have a chance and probably will be resurrected. But if you are killed by or slain, as they say, by Jehovah at Armageddon, there is no hope for you. That's the logic behind those who have killed their parents or children or entire families in Watchtower because they feel like that's their best hope. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Somebody wanted to comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm commenting or not. I can't hear you.
Neil, go ahead. What's on your mind?
What people don't realize is that as we used to calculate it, there's usually at least one DF or favored witness for every witness there is. You're talking about 8.6 million witnesses. My estimate is probably 24 million people who have been cast off by the organization or turned off by it. So this is a real problem for the organization. The paranoia is going to kick up with them. I don't think God's going to allow them to have one kingdom after another attacked. But obviously, they've got to be thinking about the repercussions of how many people they've got the records. How many people have they DF'd for the last 50 years? And it's pretty much double, if not triple, what their organizational numbers are. That's scary stuff for them.
Yeah.
Hey, I feel empowered by it. That's my comment.
No, thank you so much for chiming in, brother. That is such a valid point to consider.
Just
Absolutely.
These are just the facts, ma'am.
I just want to add one thing. My 14-year-old niece, when she was excommunicated at the Medford Kingdom Hall on the stage, she was kicked out of the home. And later, when she went to her mother had a brain tumor, and I went to the brain tumor. I live in Northern Oregon, and I was invited by my mother to come down because Melba had a brain tumor, and they had tried to save her, but nothing worked. Anyway, when she died that night, her daughter came from a foster home to see her. She was shunned. Now think about that. This is the one that was taken on the stage, and everybody was told to shun her. Then a few years later, her mother dies from a brain tumor. She comes to see her mother, and no one would even see her. She stayed there about 2 or 3 hours, sitting next to her mother, and then left. That was when I was still a Jehovah's Witness then. So I participated in it to a degree. I mean, I had taken her in at one time for 2 weeks before. So I was kind of hedging, but I was in fear of being disfellowship myself at that point. But that was the one thing that really turned me more than anything else. And that was about the time that Raymond Francis' book came out too. Between that and what I had to witness, it changed me to resign. But of course you feel anger. I went to an assembly and picketed it, and I got some really nasty comments. You're a dog that's returned to its vomit, I was told. That kind of thing. And of course you get angry and you think of retaliation, but you have to get it under control, because that's a bigger win if you can protest it and make people aware of it. And that's what I encourage people to do more of. I think that the witness religion is a religion of enslavement. And I think that there is a potential that the mood is going to change worldwide. Already in Norway, they're talking about shunning. Usually the governments have trouble with the witnesses because of blood transfusion or because of other issues, but not because they consider them enslaved. But there's getting to be that realization in other countries, like in Norway and the other country, one in Western Europe, Belgium. So I think that we need to just reach out to people and help them whenever we can. And if we know someone that's been shunned, because we knew a guy that we were working at the coast, and he was only 16 years old and he was being shunned, and he was really suicidal. And I don't know if we helped him, but we did the best we could. You have to do the best you can with these people, because sometimes the young ones get angry and they don't have control of their emotions, and this is what can happen. And it's a tragedy, because of those killed, there were a bunch of people that had nothing to do with him shunned. There was a woman killed that was pregnant. So it's really horrible. A horror leads to another. But the witnesses need to start realizing that when they break up families, they're creating almost unmanageable situations in sadness and grief. And a lot of people that are disfellowshipped commit suicide. I know people, friends that I grew up with. I grew up in La Puente, California, and I was a pioneer for 6 years. And I know a lot of people, and I can tell you there's a lot of people who become suicidal when they're being shunned by all their family. Usually they don't think about lashing out at their witnesses, but once in a while somebody does, like what happened in Germany, and that makes it even worse. That doesn't mean that you don't have responsibility. Somehow you have to accept the shunning and grow from it and go on. But that's not easy for everybody to do. That's all I got to say.
I really appreciate your point, and I've learned to deal with the shunning too, but I didn't have my marriage destroyed, my home destroyed, my children taken from me. Who knows? I mean, some of us suffer less than others, and some of us maybe are stronger than others. Some of us maybe had some support on the outside. Maybe we didn't lose everything and everyone. I don't know. Again, it's not an excuse, but there is some understandability. And when you've lost everything, and it's not just the end, it's the way we're treated from the get-go, the snide remarks, the accusation, told that you're garbage, that Jehovah has thrown you away from before his face, that you are going to die. You're walking bird food. I mean, you know, there just comes a point for some people where they stop. And it's a sad thing. And again, you know, I'm hoping that more and more will step back, whether they have left Watchtower or are in Watchtower, whether they're PMEs physically in, mentally in, or PIN-Qs physically in, mentally questioning. I hope they step back and objectively look at the entire situation. Is this really evidence of being God's organization? Thank you so much. Is there any final comments? We've kind of gone over time.
One final comment.
We're going to have to just wrap it up. We've got 1 minute, Anne-Marie, 1 minute. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Hurry up, please.
Okay, well, I have three nieces, and it's well documented that they were abused. One ended up in the hospital, and the abuse was reported by the hospital. Another was reported by fellow students and teachers. In no case did the witnesses who were aware of the abuse and had dealt with it, did they ever report it to the authorities, because they don't report to the authorities.
Well, that is
every one of these cases, these three young women have shown courage, and they've gone on with their lives, and they've gotten relationships. One was homeless for 7 years, as I said, but she managed to get past that, and she's living now. And then my other other sisters are doing good, and it's all documented. It was in the newspaper stories.
Thank
just want
you
to say
so
that
much
people
for your
need to make
comment.
that stuff up.
Last thought, making it up. Okay, I think we've used up our last minute. I want to thank everyone who commented for coming in and listening in. And it is a sorry situation, but it's good we got to discuss it. And we're going to hand it over to Rick. It's time for JW World News. Thank you, everyone who called in. Rick?
Right here, Anne-Marie. Very good. Now, listen, folks, I know everyone wants to speak up. We'll be picking up more on this story on JW World News coming up. So save your comments, and you'll be able to comment on our news coming up here next. So I want to thank all those that have come in tonight and commented. Really, really appreciate it. I really know that it's something that is very troubling among not only the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves, but troubling among ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, the shooting in Germany. We'll pick it up on the other side here. We got some other stories we'll talk about, and then we'll give a little rest here for a few minutes, then we'll get right back into that story so we'll be able to speak up in there. I'm going to right now put everything on what they call lecture mode.
All participants are muted.
Okay, so everyone's muted right now, but we're going to go forward here with our program, and I'll unmute people when we feel, because there's so many people coming in tonight, we'll just have all kinds of people talking in the background. So everyone's muted, and then we'll get our program started here, and I'll open up the lines and you can speak up. But let's get the wheels of progress moving. We're going to end this program right here, but stay with us if you're on YouTube, Facebook.